We'll start recording. Okay, welcome to the fifth session of the online network of independent learning professionals. Today we've got Julie Mitchell speaking about gamification, interactive panel, Q&A, and then a couple of polls toward the end. Definitely audience participation. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to do that as weigh in the chat as we go through. I'm going to go ahead and get this rolling, pass it over to Julie Mitchell, and she can share her screen and kind of introduce yourself and what you do, and then we'll just jump right into your presentation. If anybody has any questions as she is talking, feel free to chat them, and then we will go through all the questions toward the end. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and over to you, Julie.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's good to see these wonderful faces, and I'm pleased to share the research that I have from my look into gamification. My name is Julie Mitchell. I do engaging in interactive training. I have been able to streamline, make a training a little bit shorter from a timeline perspective, and then also do more engagement to help people remember what they've learned and then increase the retention of the learners. I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation. I will share the screen, and then after that, I'm going to go right on into my, there we go. So you should all be able to see the screen from here. Good?
Yes.
All right. Lovely. All right.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think of gamification as gaming your system, because when we're looking at the things that we know we need to do, we often know how to do them. We often know all the steps, but we need a little bit of help just to act on them. So gamification gives you a little bit of that push. So gaming your system is that same way of like you game a system, get yourself to find those little ways around it. Leverage the motivation that you already know about yourself, what motivates you, in order to encourage behavior change. In my presentation, I will share with you the gamification components that I have found, and also an example of gamification through a company called Bunchball, who does some really wonderful work. And then I look forward to answering any questions that you have to the best of my abilities. So first question is often, what is gamification? Gamification, it adds game components to whatever your regular learning content is. So it'll increase the amount of participants' engagement. It'll increase the enjoyment and fun that's there. Perfect for if you have people that you're training, if you have clients, if you have customers or workforce that you're wanting to motivate. You're possibly already familiar with McDonald's and their monopoly and how they gamified the buying of their product. Many reward systems through airlines use a type of gamification with the point systems and rewards and status. So when you're looking at the gamification components, first part is you really need to study and know your workforce. Get an idea of what their motivations and behaviors, so you can kind of get the buy-in that you need in order to get it going. Develop a point system, using that so that you can rank, and challenges are a huge part of gamification, where you have a quest or a mission to give it a little bit more importance and oomph. You also want to track what you're doing, either do it as in a competitive way, so different teams or different individuals, or just tracking an individual's progress, like where you are from one place to another. I've used gamification for weight loss, and it was a wonderful way of knowing where I was at, and then it was also a public team where they knew a percentage. They didn't know my personal weight, which is a good thing. So you can also divide it between the personal and private. Last is giving a reward. And rewards are really, they're up to you. It has to do with your, going back to number one, knowing your workforce. What would they be interested in? Do they want points? Would they want badges? Would they want status? Would they want monetary incentives? You figure out what those best rewards are. And earlier I talked about Bunchball because they have a really wonderful video that exemplifies gamification in a way that helps you see all of those different components. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click here into their site. What they do is they take the challenges and they apply them to the behaviors for motivating actions.
And just a heads up, we don't see the video yet, just so you're aware.
Okay.
You may have to share your screen, not your application.
Good point. So it may be like stop, yeah, perfect. Stop sharing and then try to reshare.
And then share screen.
Yeah, or just click the, the video if you can't see how to share the full screen.
Now do y'all see the video? Right.
We see your presentation, and let's see. I see you clicking, and then no.
But you don't see it. Okay, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Let me try it one more time. Let's see.
Sure.
Share screen.
And while Julie's doing this, if anybody has ever used gamification or has any tips, feel free to put that in the chat as well. Perfect. We see the video now.
Okay.
We don't hear audio, but maybe you can kind of tell us what's happening.
So there's not a lot of sound going on right now. He's just
got it.
And the boss is trying to figure out what to do about low motivation, and they're talking about firing or downsizing, and then they're curious about the next office. As they look into the next office, they hear like music and fun, and as you can see, they're productive. And he's talking about getting more leads for the day. And the gentleman is on the telephone, basically telling the client the product is too complicated for them, and he doesn't understand why she hung up because she needs the product. And he's a little rude. And it's talking about the things that Nitro does where you direct it and you choose the roles and you can get a very productive workforce, which then changes into higher revenues. And so I really like that video because it does show pretty well how it's an individualized group of training for the things that different people have. It starts off with knowing the workforce and getting in that buy-in, knowing what motivates them. They were always given a mission, and they had to choose to accept it or not. There was also resources already available for them. It's gamification is not something that you use in order to replace good training. It just moves your training to the next level. The next thing, it showed you the point system and how the different actions were weighed. They really needed those leads, so he gave her, 50 points for her to do that. And then depending on what you need, you just increase it accordingly, your point system for difficulty, desire, or aversion. So we're pretty familiar with point systems and how a lot of times dealerships have used it or salespeople have used it for your scoreboard, and everybody keeps track. And those challenges that they have, a lot of it is the core of gamification, whether those are missions or quests. You use your goals and your benchmarks in order to define those missions and quests so that you can get your desired outcomes. With all of those things, you then are able to track. You'll know either an individual rank or you'll know the team's rank, and that helps from everybody understand where they are with their accomplishments. And going back to the tracking of when you're doing fundraising, kind of knowing where you're at so you get more energy around the closer you get to that goal. We've got rewards as well. So the traditional rewards of gift or time, and then the more gamified rewards of badges and status. So with the status, it makes you feel good when you're number one, you're the winner, you're on top of the status leaderboard. So I want to also talk about another part of gamification that I really enjoyed from Monica Cornetti. She really looked at using a story to engage those a larger part of the workforce. She took Snow White and the payroll law and used that storyline as her mission. Snow White, the apple was equal to the problems for not knowing the payroll law. So if you didn't know what you were doing, you could get a bit of poison there. The dwarfs were the different employees or the different issues that you had with employees. So what to look out for. Made it really engaging. Also, she goes in further with knowing the motivations of your employees. So with gamification, it is wonderful because it does increase engagement. It encourages behavior change through some fun challenges, and you can use it for around any kind of content. You can make it, you can pay a company like Bunchball to help you make it electronic and interactive in that way, or you can do, I've done with different training companies, just a basic game with the ball and throwing it around or doing little challenges within a board game. And that is my presentation on gamification. So go ahead and create a game around your content.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Julie.
Welcome.
So we have a question back where they could choose to accept or decline the mission. What happens if they decline? Someone said maybe they end up at the company across the hall.
Well, that's possible. And with that, you're really looking at number one, knowing your people, knowing their motivations, knowing what they want. So then you'd want to tailor a different challenge, and maybe even talk to them about different things. During one of my presentations with gamification, I ran into somebody who she absolutely couldn't stand games, so it made it difficult for her to accept any of the missions. But she did like the storyline, and so that helped a lot. And she was really excited about the incentive of stars, which was quite fun. Am I still connected with my computer?
It looks like your webcam, maybe your internet is having some difficulties, but we can hear you since you're dialed in via the phone. Yeah.
Okay. So I will just continue.
Good backup by dialing in on the phone.
Yes.
So what other questions or thoughts do people have about gamification? One question that I did have is, that the Snow White storyline, that seems really interesting. Was there an example of that somewhere, or anywhere that we can see like how that ended up?
Monica Cornetti's on LinkedIn, and how it ended up. She's got a little excerpt of the different. I remember Grumpy Gus was one of the payroll people, so I can grab that link and share it with you. How best would I share that with the group?
Just put it in the chat. That would be great for us to see that.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got a couple of other comments. Competition is a difficult aspect related to gamification. Ashley says she feels like it could work really well in a sales environment, but be careful about negatively impacting morale for those who aren't so great at selling things. Yes. There's a company here out of Denver that I know sells, it's kind of like a gamification platform, and it's kind of cool. It's because it gives different, like if you've got, say, 1,800 locations, like a Chipotle, it lets you kind of see how you're doing compared to other restaurants, and and kind of creates like a friendly little back and forth competition. So, but I can also see like the negative side of it. But anyway, that's kind of interesting. Any other thoughts or questions before we move on to the Q&A?
Actually, I was going to go ahead and address the one on competition that you're saying.
Yes.
It kind of goes back to when one of the first introduction of gamification that I was actually involved in was with a weight loss. It's called Healthy Wage, and it had us compete against other teams, and also there was the individual. So the way that the tracking and what I could see was different. So I knew my actual weight, I knew my actual numbers. Other people only saw a percentage of what I was doing. So it was a smaller amount that the larger group saw. So there's that, and then there's a lot of power too in just an individual progress. So if you're in a place where competition against each other is not what you want, you can still have people compete against themselves and do the tracking that way.
That's an awesome way to mitigate that.
Yeah.
For you. Anything else, anyone? Shannon?
Hey, so I just had a funny story, you know me with the funny stories. We had a client who was using kind of a gaming platform that used assigned badges, silver, bronze, gold, and you got to be careful what you name your courses. Before you knew it, we had a lot of people getting gold badges in sexual harassment. So, got to think about that.
Oh, yeah.
It's worth a laugh. Bob got a gold in sexual harassment today.
I'm the best there is at sexual harassment. Doesn't get
That's
better.
right.
Yes,
That's great.
definitely being careful. Definitely being careful.
Any other
Well, I
thoughts?
hope you guys enjoyed the presentation.
Yes. In fact, everybody, let's give Julie a round of applause. Feel free to in the chat, or thank you so much. Yes, incredible. Bethany has a question. Look at all that love in the chat. Oh, I like it. Bethany has a question. Has anyone found a good way to create a story? Bethany, could you expand on that a little bit, that question?
Sure. I guess just that I sometimes struggle to come up with a story that doesn't sound like super hokey. And so I don't know if somebody has like a good like path, like you need 4 specific parts, and these, part 1 needs 3 aspects. So I just don't know if anybody maybe has some expertise in that.
Great question. Can anyone answer Bethany's question?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of it has to do with what the subject matter is and really working with your subject matter expert on how to craft that story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's a good point. I mean, some stories, just like the sexual harassment, like not every kind of story is going to work with sexual harassment.
Right. So yeah, something like, hey, listen, Bob and Jane are at work, and Bob's sexually harassed. Like, I don't know I'm not sure that's a really great story. I mean, it makes sense, but I don't know. Like you said, making a story about it may not be the appropriate venue. But one of the things that I've been working on, or I actually just rolled off on, is a coaching like sales and office skills. And the biggest part of that was really working with my subject matter expert to really talk about what these people are actually going to say, right? And how to make that real, rather than, oh, Bill walked into the office and said, "Hey, James, you have this report's due in 2 days. How are you going to quote unquote communicate up to them?" That doesn't really make sense, right? So being a real situation talk, like there are reason your subject matter expert is called a subject matter expert. They have X amount of years in the field to do that. So ask them. I think one of the big things that really troubles, I think, new instructional designers is really, I'm not going to say be aggressive with your subject matter expert, but remember that you're the expert on instructional design. They're the expert in the field. So the whole point is to combine the two together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So exactly. Patti just put up a great website. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely you want to, if you're I feel like I'm rambling. I think working with your subject matter expert, but don't be afraid to push back on your subject matter expert as well. I think that's the best way to create a story. Is there's some kind of conflict between you and, not necessarily conflict, but there's some kind of energy between you and the subject matter expert. And if there's disagreement, then you can start talking about how does this make sense for us.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's very helpful, James. Thank you so much. And I do agree with Christy as well. Is I try to design things that actually going to happen in real life. So the cool thing is I don't have to look very far. I literally just say, okay, well, we need them to learn how to do this thing. Well, how would this interaction typically go? And then just build it from there. So that's one of the ways. What else? Any other thoughts?
Well, I actually do have a question. We've been talking about gamification a lot today, and I've been reading on the Articulate Storyboard, the Articulate Forum, and a couple of my connections as well have brought this up, that when gamification kind of goes wrong, and James Finder's talking. I apologize. So I wanted to know, is there ever a time where gamification doesn't go right? Like, for example, my LinkedIn network was posting, and I'll post up the link right now, of a battleship game that's done, and how that really just sort of blew up, and how this isn't like, what's the reason we're gamifying something? Does that make sense?
I think, James, that it's a good point. Gamification has a place. I don't necessarily see gamification as being valid in every specific case, and in those scenarios where the learning objectives just don't match up. Like maybe there's a process issue that needs to get corrected, and that process issue isn't really related to something that could easily be gamified. Maybe the process issue is related to people coming in on time, or people correctly filling out a checklist. In that case, it may not be a very good gamification scenario, so there it probably would fail. You don't want to necessarily start out your plan saying, I'm going to make a game.